Hello, scholars. This is Mr. Myers. We're going to do lesson 3.6 on freedom of religion. It's important that you take good structured notes. We're going to be looking at aspects of the freedom of religion associated with the First Amendment. We're going to be looking at two different areas of that: Establishment Clause and the Free Exercise Clause, and then landmark cases associated with each. Okay, let's go. Okay, so let's start with the Establishment Clause. The Establishment Clause is the very first thing listed in the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of a religion. This idea was furthered in a letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote in 1802 when he said that there should be a wall of separation between the church and the state. So that language isn't anywhere in the Bill of Rights or in the Constitution, but we have come to kind of adopt that phrase as being kind of sacrosanct in the United States. What this basically means is that the government cannot support or favor one religion over other religions, but there's different ways to interpret that. The first is a broad interpretation that said that the government can give no aid to religion whatsoever, that they have to be treated the same as any other group or any other non-religious entity. There's a narrow interpretation which would say that you can't really give favoritism to a particular religion, but it's acceptable to generally endorse beliefs. So, having prayers on the floor of the House and the Senate before Congress begins a session, or having In God We Trust and Our Money, those things would kind of fit under that category. And then there's a literal interpretation which says that as long as the government doesn't actually establish an official religion that says, like, Christianity is our state religion, the government can do whatever it wants. I think it's fair to say that the Supreme Court has largely fallen down into this narrow interpretation, but there are cases and times when the Supreme Court would move towards the literal interpretation and sometimes more broad. So here are some landmark cases that we would want you to be familiar with regarding the Establishment Clause. The first, Everson v. Board in 1947, kind of adopted or codified that language of wall of separation between church and state into our statutory law. Engel v. Vitale in 1962 banned teacher-led prayer in school. That was kind of a big deal at the time. Probably the most important one on here is Lemon v. Kurtzman in 1971. And what this case did was established a three-part test to determine whether or not a government law or action violates the Establishment Clause. I'll go ahead and tell you what the three parts of the Lemon test are now. The first is, does the law or government action create an excessive entanglement between the church and the state? The second is, does the effect of the law or government action inhibit or advance religion? And then the third one is, does the law or government action have a secular purpose? And if all three of those are passed, then the government action or law would be deemed constitutional. Other cases that you need to know: Edwards v. Aguillard in 1987 banned the teaching of creationism. Lee v. Weissman in 1992 banned clergy-led prayer at graduations. And Santa Fe Schools v. Doe in 2000 banned student-led prayer at school-sponsored events. Okay, now on to the second part of the First Amendment that deals with religion. So Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of a religion. We've talked about that already. Or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. So basically what that means is that the government cannot interfere with your personal belief systems, with your ability to worship as you see fit. Now, there are restrictions to this. No discrimination based on different faith or religions can exist. So again, you can't allow a practice in one religion but disallow that practice in another. If a government is going to deny the free exercise of some aspect of worshiping your religion, it must involve some kind of compelling state interest. There must be some kind of major reason why the state feels it's okay to impinge upon your free exercise rights. And it must be the least restrictive way in order to achieve that goal. So let's say if there was one aspect of, Satan worshiping that violated a city ordinance or a state law or whatever, the least restrictive way would be to ban that particular practice as opposed to outlawing the entire religion. A couple of famous Supreme Court cases associated with the Free Exercise Clause would be West Virginia v. Barnett in 1943. This basically said students cannot be required to pledge allegiance if it interferes with their free exercise of faith. The example here would be like Jehovah's Witnesses, who, according to their faith, don't think it's acceptable to pledge allegiance to anyone or anything except for God. In this case, the state had to kind of weigh its compelling interest to have citizens who are patriotic and who pledge allegiance to the United States. That has to be weighed against the free exercise of the Jehovah's Witnesses to exercise their religion as they see fit. In this particular case, there are other ways that the schools could promote patriotism or citizenship or loyalty to the United States in some other way, and therefore the courts ruled that this is a violation of their free exercise rights. A little bit more of a recent case that made headlines was Burwell v. Hobby Lobby in 2014. The owners of Hobby Lobby are deeply religious, and that has been kind of a part of their branding for a long time. And there was a kerfuffle over them refusing to allow employees under their health care plans to access birth control. And in this particular case, it was ruled that Hobby Lobby had this right, that the corporation could be treated as an individual and has the same free exercise claims that individuals have. The last thing I want to mention to make sure to get in your notes is that the vast majority of cases dealing with religion that work their way up through the courts deal with the Establishment Clause. So the next time you walk past a nativity scene on City Hall property, you can apply the Lemon test and decide for yourself whether or not that law or government action excessively entangles church and state, inhibits or advances religion, or has a secular or religious purpose. Okay, everyone, I hope you took good notes. Please bring any questions to class.